mothers and fathers, husbands and wives, sisters and brothers, friends for life. We won't live in the past. We're making it last.
It's time for another conversation. Welcome to Making It Last podcast, where it's all about helping us to have better relationships, not just with ourselves, with other people. And I'm here with Jaime Mann. She's a business owner and a leadership expert. And we're going to be talking about this whole concept of connection as currency and how that will impact the future of work. Welcome, Jaime.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So before we get into how it will impact, what is this concept of connection as currency?
Yeah, what we need to sort of remember is that whether or not we're working in a large organization or a small one, whether we are
Mhm.
high tech or not, no matter where the future takes us, connection and how we relate to other people is still foundationally going to be what drives a business
Okay.
and
Okay.
drives everything.
Mm-hmm. So, but tell me a bit in terms of currency though, because when people think currency, they think money. So how
Well,
then do we make that switch to
yeah.
relationships? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. Connection
Mm-hmm.
is really what is the valuable
Okay.
asset that we're going to
Okay.
have, whether we're running our own companies or in larger
Mm-hmm.
organizations. I mean, the research shows if we actually don't have strong relationships and relate well with others,
Mm-hmm.
everything suffers, not
Okay.
only our own mental health. Even with the rates of anxiety and burnout, right? When we look at the research around civility and respect, everybody talks about respect and how important that is. And
Mm-hmm.
lots of companies have respectful workplace policies. At the same time, the research shows that the majority of people feel that they aren't included, they don't belong,
Yeah.
they're disrespected. And what the research shows there is huge disparities between, what we want to be as far as productive and how productive we actually are. So, just one stat, people who feel that they're continually sort of disrespected and don't relate with their colleagues, they intentionally do less work. They intentionally spend less time at work. They intentionally hand in deliverables that aren't up to expectation. They just don't feel committed to their work or their company or their colleagues. At the end of the day, we're all human. And no matter
True.
how smart we are, on paper, there's
Mm-hmm.
still foundationally the way we're wired is for connection. The
True.
way we
True.
engage is based on how we feel. So the idea of connection as currency is like, how are we going to get our organizations and our teams to where we need to be? And it's not going to be with adopting AI. It's not, I mean, that's part of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Streamlining processes, of course. But
Right.
at the
Right.
end of the day, how we feel is going to make the difference in how productive we are at our workplaces.
But there are a lot of people who have the mindset, and you're actually fed that sometimes through social media that your coworkers are not your friends.
Hmm.
So if you're at work, you're at work. So in a lot of person's mind, I go to get a job done. It's not
Yes.
about building connections. So how then,
Yeah.
can we literally shift that mindset then, Jamie?
Right,
How?
right. Uh, what I think of right away is
Mm-hmm.
we all think about, we're here to get a job done. I don't
Mm-hmm.
need to be friends with my colleagues. Totally agreed. I agree with you 100%. It's
Okay.
not about being friends with our colleagues. It's about doing foundationally the behaviors that actually make us feel like we're a valued member of the group. So
Okay.
there's a lot of
Okay.
things that happen that many of us are unaware of, right? Because we all have our own perspectives and assumptions on, what is appropriate, what isn't appropriate. We all have our own perceptions of what behaviors I do send you the message I respect you as a human. And there's a great disparity. So, one of the things when I work with teams and when I speak on collaboration and how we actually form meaningful connections with others, it's not
Mm-hmm.
about the stuff where it's like, hey, how was your weekend, Noreen? Like, oh, I remember your kid had a birthday party. Like, that's nice because that shows you like, hey, I listen to you, I care about you, but that's
Okay.
not what it's all about. What it's all about is when we're at work and we each have our own work goals we're working on, and then of course we have the larger kind of team goals generally. But when I'm
Mm-hmm.
at work
Mm-hmm.
doing my thing, do I have an understanding of how my work impacts you? Do I take
Okay.
that into account?
Okay.
Right? Because you can imagine if even something so simple as, I do my work in a different way because it makes better sense for me and it really
Mm-hmm.
is a headache for you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm unaware of it. I maybe don't care. It's not my problem. That's a Noreen problem,
Right.
right? And
Right. Right.
that sort of mindset is what disconnects us, what makes us think, ugh, I don't want to go to work. I don't want to work with this Noreen person, right? It's those things that are going to follow us around. I kind of think of it like we're dragging around heavy suitcases all day when we have that with us. And there's simple things we can do to sort of impact, really. We don't have to be best friends. I might not even agree with you on
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
foundational important topics, but I know that you think about me and how you impact me, and I appreciate that. So
Mm.
there's a difference.
Okay. You said just now that there are simple things, I guess, that can be done to what? To
Yes.
make sure that there's that connection. What are some of
Yeah.
those simple things? Maybe things that we literally overlook. What
Yeah.
are those things?
Right. Well, if we think about, whether we're in any type of organization, one thing that is going to
Mm-hmm.
impact anybody listening is how we use our time and how we expect others to use their time. Time is a big one that
Yeah.
you probably maybe think
Yeah.
about it a lot
Yeah.
differently than I do. And this
Mm-hmm.
can come down to where we were born and where we grew up, what our experiences have been in other companies and in our careers. And it can actually also come down to generational differences too, right? We can't
True.
discount that we're in an era where we have the most number of generations working together than ever before. And so
True.
when I think, oh, Noreen's never on time for this meeting. Well, what does time mean to me?
Then
I'm the type
yeah.
of person who, if I'm not 15 minutes early, I'm late. You might have a very different understanding of that.
Depending.
And so, first of
Mm-hmm.
all, how do we understand time and how we use time? Are we aligned? And if we're not, then how do we sort of have a conversation to understand? Okay, Noreen, you know what? I know when you show up at 1 minute into the meeting, to you, that's on time. To me, it's
Mm-hmm.
not. Normally, no problem. But in this case, this is why we have to show up at least 5 minutes early, like for these reasons. And then you go, oh, I understand why that makes a difference. Okay. And foundationally, when we work with other people, we do want to consider the impact we have. So if all of a sudden,
Yeah.
my work changes, something changes, right? Changes come in fast and heavy for all of us. So something changes, I need to do something differently. Maybe for this one case, I'm like, Noreen, I need this thing from you way sooner than normally I get it from you. But what do I do? Do I show up in your office? Do I kind of not even notice you're on a call, maybe deep focused work, and I barge in and I go, I need this from you, Noreen. I need it by the end of the day instead of next week. Or do I kind of consider, okay, where is Noreen in her work right now? How will this request
Yeah.
impact her in her time? And then I show you through the way I communicate, the way I even use my physical space and come to you to ask. I'm showing you I am considering that I do know this is going to impact you. And I'm communicating, I do need it, and this is why. And how can we make this work? Because what I see with time is people have different expectations. They don't really consider that we all have different perspectives and we don't consider our impact. So when I make a request of you, do I even think, well, how does this actually impact your work? Or do I request everything from you? Everything's urgent. I need everything in 1 minute. How does this come across to you? Because if I'm always barging in, requesting stuff urgently, you're going to be like, God, Jamie's stressing me out, man. I don't want to work with her. So that's just one simple thing about considering how time is different for all of us. The other thing, and I've mentioned impact a couple times, is humans aren't very self-aware generally. So, the research shows that 10 to 15% of us are like actually self-aware. Whereas the research shows that most of us say we're self-aware. I think it's 80 something percent say, yeah, I'm self-aware. The reality is it's much lower. So when we're working with other people, what do we do to build our own awareness? Do we actually engage in like getting feedback from each other? Like, hey, Noreen, I know in this meeting we just had, like, I feel it could have gone better, like on my part. And I'm really curious what you think, And then you, assuming the best intentions of me, give me feedback that's usable. Because we're all kind of muddling around in our own darkness, really. Like we're all in our own heads.
In their own.
And we can get in a lot of sticky situations. And when we rely on assumptions, my way is the right way. I'm Jaime Mann, keynote speaker and leadership expert with the Amaryllis Project. We're going to break for a minute to get some important words from our partners.
You can't live your best life without a healthy immune system. Boost your immune system the delicious way with Zappy's organic juices and punches. Made from local produce with zero added sugar, our juices cleanse and revitalize your body as they boost your natural immunity. Try our delicious flavors. Beat It, Berry Bomb, Get Fresh, Ton Up, and Island Splash. Find us on Instagram at Zappy's Organics or call or send a WhatsApp message at 1-876-779-8910 to order today. That's 1-876-779-8910. Zappy's Organic Juices and Punches. Live your best life today.
I was the person who the teacher would always call on to read aloud in class, and that traveled with me until whenever. But if you took away the paper, if you took away the book, I would freeze. I would die right on the spot. Let me introduce you to my 17, say 18-year-old self. Good with content if I'm to read. However, if I was to ever express my thoughts without writing them on paper, it was no good. Noreen was the one who recognized my flaw, but she didn't leave it there. She led me along the journey of developing my communication skills. She allowed me to know how to critically think on the spot, but not only that, how to arrange my thoughts logically so that I can come across as persuasive in my argument.
Langdo Language Institute was created to meet your language and communication needs. All of our packages were created just for you. We are passionate about language and dedicated to your success. We offer the CSEC English program, the Study Buddy program, the Get Ahead with English program, and the Business Communication program. Contact us at 767-285-0938 or email us at landolanguage@gmail.com, because the real question is, how can we help you?
It doesn't get us very far.
How open though are people to this? That's the first part of the question, and I have a follow-up. How open are people to this concept?
depends on the person and it depends on our experiences. So we can't we can't dismiss the fact that most of us have probably had some nasty experiences in the past with, say, getting feedback, right? Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
feedback can be extremely critical and abrasive, and that leaves a lasting impression on how we think about feedback. So if that's
Mm-hmm.
anybody listening, like, I don't discount that. That's something that absolutely impacts us. What I would say is if, any of us are feeling like, I've got it all figured out, I'm good, I don't need feedback, that's inaccurate. So maybe I'll get hate mail after, but we really
Mm-hmm.
do need feedback. So I think if we are committed to creating a better experience for ourselves, never
Mm-hmm.
mind
Mm-hmm.
others, let's keep it selfish for a minute. If I want to
Right.
create a
Right.
better experience for myself, I have a responsibility to myself to try and understand how I can get a little bit better in my work. When we do
Mm-hmm.
that, people see that and it automatically connects us, because what it does is it goes, oh, you know what? Jamie's putting herself out there and she's actually trying to do
True.
better.
True.
And it impacts me and I appreciate that. And so if we can create that kind of culture of accountability, and yes, leadership, the folks in leadership,
Mm-hmm.
let's
Mm-hmm.
start there.
Mm-hmm.
So for any leaders listening, we can actually model the behavior that we want to see
What?
and the behaviors that are going to make a difference for our whole team. It's in our best interest to model it because it's going to make our lives easier if we're leaders.
Yeah.
But people aren't generally naturally open to it because it sometimes doesn't feel very good.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
when we approach people, how do we approach them in a way with good intentions, um, honesty and candor and kindness? Those things aren't kind of exclusive. We can have them together. I can still give you open, honest, candor feedback in a way that is kind.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you think this concept is applied to specific organizations or, across industries? Or do you think for specific industries, they're the ones who should really pay attention to this?
Every industry that I've worked in,
Okay.
every company that I've worked in, absolutely, this is something that's valuable to look at. With
Okay.
that being said, there are certain types of industries or organizations where I do see more of a kind of selfish perspective, like my work is my work, I
Okay.
don't care
Okay.
about you. And we're
Okay.
sort of like out to one up each other. And
Okay. Okay.
those are the more competitive organizations where perhaps it's highly sales based,
Okay.
where
Okay.
my career and my salary is based on what I sell.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, if I'm
Mm-hmm.
rewarded in that way, I'm probably more likely to be like focused on my own
Mm-hmm.
goal
Mm-hmm.
and not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily collaborative.
Okay.
Um,
Fair enough.
but any
Fair enough.
organization that's like, I'm seeing high turnover, like, how come I'm not keeping people here?
Mm-hmm.
Why
Mm-hmm.
do people seem
Mm-hmm.
miserable? We're human. And at the end of the day, it's like when we go home, how do we feel about our work?
Hmm.
AI isn't
Okay.
going to save us if we can't hire people to do the work.
Mm-hmm. 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 So as we're wrapping up, I want you to give two bits of advice. First, to the persons who are part of a team.
Mhm.
What would be your bit of advice to them to say, hey, at the end of the day, I've said all of this, but if you get nothing else, this is the one bit of advice I want you to get from this conversation. This is for people who are members of a team. What would that bit
Mhm.
of advice be?
Oh, there's so many. I would say, okay, one bit of advice that I would definitely want to share is that we don't want to underestimate how tricky our brains are.
Okay.
So just because we think one thing doesn't mean it's accurate, true, valuable, or
Okay.
useful.
Okay.
So if I feel super right,
Mm-hmm.
am I though? And the second part of that is if I even am right, what's the outcome I'm looking for?
Okay.
Am I going to fight to the death with Noreen on something
Mm-hmm.
because I know I'm right?
Mm-hmm.
Are we going to have a dialogue about something and discuss like what we're working towards? What's the ultimate outcome?
Okay. Love it. Love it. And for leaders, what would be your bit of advice for them?
Leadership is hard. Leadership is like to be a really good leader, you do have to be a bit vulnerable and be open to like not having all the answers. And so my advice there would be, when's the last time you asked your team for feedback on your approach or how you run meetings or how you any of it? When's the last time you asked for feedback from the people you lead? That's gold, the
Yeah.
feedback you get there.
Yeah. 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 Thank you so much for sharing, Jamie.
Thank you, Noreen.
This was Making It Last podcast, where it's all about helping us to have better relationships, not just with ourselves, but with other people. I'm Noreen Daly. Until next time.
Mothers and fathers, husbands and wives, sisters and brothers, friends for